Hey everybody, what's going on? Here we got Azekahh here. It's been 3 weeks. I don't know. It's been a while. Yeah. So, Fallout Equestria Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is called Calamity. Friendship. Friendship never changes. Alive! I was still alive. As consciousness came back to me, I found myself lying on a mattress with blankets tucked about me, feeling warm and rested and more comfortable than I had since I left the stable 3 days ago. At last, I thought it was 3 days. At least I thought it was 3 days. I had no idea how long I had been unconscious. By habit, I lifted up my forehoof to check the date and time on my pip buck, doing so unsettled in the blanket, which proceeded to slide to the floor. Voice of a pretty mare. Alright, I don't know who it is, so, oh, look who's awake! The pretty voice of a mare awfully close to me shocked me in full alertness. Man, not doing so hot. Looking up and about, I found myself surrounded by several ponies, one of which I recognized, and that was the Pegasus who shot me up in the first place. I wondered if I was his prisoner. The voice had come from an equally pretty, white-coated earth pony, whose cotton candy pink mane matched the pink and yellow striped nurse's dress she was wearing. Scanning what I could see of the walls through the small crowd of ponies, I saw a line of 3 medical boxes, all the little pink butterflies perfectly in a row, and a faded pre-war poster apparently advertising jobs and healthcare services. "You don't need to be a Steel Ranger to be a hero! Join the Ministry of Peace today!" Announced the mayor on the poster, barely more than a filly, who wore the exact same dress that I saw brought to life before me. Between the decor and the lack of ropes or chains, I concluded this was a clinic, and I was not captive. Besides, I was actually feeling quite good, tired, almost like I needed a good nap, except I wasn't sleepy, just tired. Kinda warm. I sat up, and the room spun. "Take it easy there, partner." The Pegasus whose name I called was Calamity. Recalled was Calamity. Although I was a bit fuzzy on how I learned that, said, stepping towards me, I scooted back on the mattress. Oh, sure, he looked polite and gentle now with all these ponies around, but I'd seen him when he was all murder from above, guns blading, death Pegasus, let's see, I just don't know these voices. Candy? One of the other ponies, a gray-coated earth pony with black mane and tail, asked as she looked to my nurse, although to me it sounded like he was calling her Candy, and I felt an oddly cheerful urge to agree. "Oh, she'll be perfectly fine." Wait. Is that... correct? Oh, man, that looks like an N. Is that an R and an I? No, that's an N. I'm sorry, I'm doing really bad. Alright. "Oh, she'll be perfectly fine. I mixed up the last healing potion she needed and gave it to her less than an hour ago." Mixed? The gray earth pony raised an eyebrow dubiously. Candy smiled. "Why, with apple schnapps, of course. I find the medicine always goes down better that way." I guess Candy is not Calamity, as I was thinking that... I'm just gonna stop trying to explain myself. Candy smiled. "Why, with apple schnapps, of course. I find the medicine always goes down better that way." I couldn't understand why the gray pony face hoofed. I felt perfectly fine now, better than fine, and pleasantly warm. The gray stallion started shooing all my guests away. That made me feel slightly sad, although I really didn't know any of them. I had felt so lonely the last few days, so eager to find civilization, and here it was. But he wasn't letting me keep it. A thought which I realized didn't quite make sense, although I wasn't sure why. "Come on out when you're feeling up to it. I know there's some ponies who'd like to see you." The gray stallion smiled at me, then looked at the rust-colored straggler. "You too, Calamity. Out you go." Calamity took one look back at me before scooting out. Candy pranced up to me, whispering dreamily, "Such a handsome stallion, isn't he?" "Who?" "Why, Calamity, of course." I was at loss for words. No, I wasn't. He shot me. She waved that off with a hoof wiggle. I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. It was, I recalled, but why was I having this conversation? If anything, I wanted to talk about how pretty Candy was. Candy. Not to talk about Calamity. Least of all, whether or not he was handsome. None of which seemed to find a suitable way to be spoken aloud. Sulkingly, I fell back on reiterating. He shot me, then added, a lot. Oh, lordy. If I started out this bad, it's only gonna get worse from here. Azekahh, don't quit. Here we go now. More rested, and with much clearer head, I was eager to meet the ponies of New Appaloosa. By my pip-buck, I'd been out here for nearly 2 days. I gazed over the railing at the walled village. Multiple lines of what I had realized were railroad tracks converged into a town made up largely of dozens upon dozens of virtually identical homes built from old passenger cars. Many of them stacked 2 or 3 high. Most still had their wheels. Heavy metal boxcars formed a ring around the town with a massive gate on either side. Armed pony guards walked around the tops of boxcars, keeping their eyes on the wastes outside. Inside, scores of earth and unicorn ponies trotted about their daily lives. The place was dirty, rusty, yet altogether wonderful. How did you get them stacked like that? I asked, looking up at the stacked train cars, the tallest group being 4 high. Railing and catwalk spanned out from it, connecting the 2 other towers. On the highest roof, brilliantly glowing letters announced Turnpike Tavern. Railright, the gray and black stallion who turned out to be the sheriff, mayor, general hold-togetherer of the town, deadpanned. Had one of the unicorn ponies do it. I turned with a gasp, staring at him. I'd never heard of a pony levitating anything that big or heavy before. Railright had that serious expression just a moment longer before chortling. Ha ha, I'm just playing with you. My astonishment faded to a sheepish grin as he smiled and pointed towards the sky behind us. That's what the crane is for! Looking back and up, I could see the huge orange tower of metal jutting above the town, a massive hook dangling from its long arm. Although, he continued, if you're looking for a heavy lifter, you can't do better than Crane. You should talk to him. Talk to the Crane? I said slowly, trying to gauge as if this was another joke. But it wasn't. Crane, he told me, was the name of a unicorn pony who worked in the train yard. Won't find a stronger telekinetic this side of Candlelight Ruins. With that, Railright offered to give me the grand tour. New Appaloosa's general supply store was called Absolutely Everything. It was the 4th stop on the tour. Railright smiled knowingly as he coaxed me towards the odd-looking building. 3 train cars, each a different type, had been fused together to create the store. One of them was a barrel-shaped car of black metal dominated by a smokestack. This was one of the sources of smoke I had seen from the distance. Pausing in front of the door, I read signs beneath the playful block letters of the store name. Yes, I do deliveries. No hooves? Nasty singers? No service. Ask me about special orders. I won't answer, but I'll get right on it. Wasteland Survival Guide, available now. First copy for every family is free. Oh man, we got lots of deals around here. Come on down, we have many fine deals. We got armor straight from the Sunset Mountains. Oh, you can't find better prices. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, and stopped with a gasp as I saw the zombie pony from the Raider Library. I could tell she was the same one by the way one of her eyes rolled up. And just to clarify, I learned that this zombie pony was actually derpy, but if the story would have called her a ghoul instead of a zombie, then I might have gotten why it didn't attack her. So I instead was butthurt. But now I know. As I started the zombie pony, the fact that she recognized me was with an immediate bright smile and dashed over to me, an uncomfortably squishy hug, were admittedly also clues. She backtrotted and waved a forepaw about in what was surprisingly effective combination of welcome and showing off of the store. Something I hated to admit I was thankful for. The stench of her as she hugged me forced me to hold my breath. I had sure been gagging would I have been impolite. Hello again, I said, feeling a little awkward. Last time this Pegasus zombie pony saw me, I was trotting off to put a bullet in a raider's brain pan. Howdy, said a familiar voice from off to my left. I'd been so focused on the zombie pony that I'd totally missed that there were other people in the store. Turning, I found Calamity looking back at me with a bashful smile. Look, before you scamper, I just want to say how sorry I am. I didn't scamper, although I did take a cautious step back. I'm getting a story from Ditsy Doo here, see? Ditsy Doo? I turned to the Pegasus zombie. You wrote the Wasteland Survival Guide? Both Ditsy Doo's eyes managed to focus on me as she absolutely beamed with joy, nodding fervently. Yes, I do deliveries. Suddenly, I had a very good idea. That book ended up in the Ponyville library, which in turn fortified my suspicions about Watcher. While I was thinking, Ditsy Doo had rushed up another copy of the book in her mouth and was stuffing it into my saddlebags. The zombie pony was amazingly kind and generous and had a severe problem with personal space. I opened my mouth to say something, maybe that I already had a copy, although considering there had been several pages torn out of the copy. However, wherever I was about to say got derailed by a strange realization. You don't talk much, do you? Could zombie ponies talk? Ditsy Doo stepped back and opened her muzzle wide, giving me more a look at the inside of her mouth than I ever wanted. Calamity focused my attention. Ditsy Doo's tongue was cut out by slavers a few decades ago. She gets by without it real well, though. So then Monterey Jack's warning had been cringingly accurate. Ditsy Doo trotted to the sales counter, where she picked up a pencil in her teeth and scribbled something on the first sheet of large pad of notepaper. She dropped the pencil and held up the notepad, her eye going weird again. Looking strictly at the paper so my gaze didn't rudely follow her eye, I read aloud. Because I couldn't talk, I took up writing. Even if it hadn't been for that, I would never have gotten so good at it. I looked up at her with a blink. Ditsy Doo put down the pad, picking up the pencil again and added a line before lifting it again for me to read. Now, how about we get you some better armor? Bottle caps? That's what we use for money around here? As absurd as it was, and it was ludicrous, I should have seen that coming. No wonder raiders were hoarding those things. No wonder there were empty bottles littered everywhere, but not a bottle cap to be found. Except, of course, for the one I tossed casually away somewhere outside Iron-Shod Firearms. My stable utility barding was back at absolutely everything. Ditsy Doo didn't have any armor in my size, but swore she could modify my barding so that it was better than the best armor any raider could scrounge together. She offered to do it for free, too, but I insisted on paying for her work. And that's when I discovered the absolutely cockeyed, no offense, barter system used throughout the equestrian wasteland. Bottle caps. Seriously. Fortunately, pre-war money was still worth something, if only in bulk. If for no other reason than that they could get sodas out of the few machines that hadn't simply been pried open and raided already. Ditsy Doo took all but a few of my coins. I had no idea if what I had given her was fair price, but I suspect I was getting a generous discount. She also insisted on giving me a sheet of paper, detailing an entirely different use for bottle caps. A way to turn them into homemade mines, apparently. It was going to be an insert for the Wasteland Survival Guide's chapter on mines that some pony discouraged her, probably wisely, from including. When I had left absolutely everything, Railright commented, Ditsy Doo's our resident Pegasus, as well as our resident ghoul. Right, because ghoul pony sounds so much better than a zombie pony. See? That's what he should have called him from the start. But no. No! The main character didn't know what they were called. Pfft. It's just confusing. Although, he had continued, poking a hoof towards Calamity. I'll keep telling this one he's always welcome to settle down here in my town. He's been keeping the caravan safe from going for 4 years now. Now, as I was on my way to meet Crane, with Calamity trotting along beside me, I finally ventured conversation with the rust-colored stallion. So, you don't live here? Nope, I got my own place about a half-hour's flight distant. I thought over what I knew of Pegasus ponies. A place in the clouds? I could swear Calamity's eyes widened just a bit. Oh no, just a shack. Something some pony threw together a few generations ago, only to get eaten by the wild animals in these here parts. I'd already encountered some of the wild animals in these parts. As we walked down the catwalk, my gaze fell to the strange weapon that Calamity wore. My eyes following from the gun barrels to the odd metal protrusion that stuck out in front of him. A control mechanism, I suspected. I opened my mouth to ask him about it, only to find myself looking at air. I stopped. What? Only to find myself looking at air. I stopped and looked back. He had halted abruptly to let up by a mare in a straw sun hat. You hear that? She has a straw hat. Yeah. And her colt, and her husband. The mare was apparently having trouble keeping the colt from dashing off at top speed. She looked like she wanted a leash. But Ma, I wanted to go see Derpy. Oh, so I guess it's not her husband, it's actually her son. When I saw the word colt, I imagined, husband. Oh, but it's actually her son, so no confusion there. Calamity leaned close and whispered, "That's what some folks call Ditsy-Doo. 'Cause of the eye." Yeah, 'cause that's what they'd focus on. The bullies back in Stable 2 would totally have ignored the whole putrefying flesh thing for that. She doesn't seem to mind. Although, I actually think she finds it endearing. I just realized that I wasn't supposed to say that. But, there was no, quotation mark there, so yeah. I did not point out that Ditsy-Doo didn't seem to mind having her tongue cut out either. Didn't make it right. "Trolley, you get back here!" the mother called out as the colt started to trot a little too fast. "And you stay away from that store! I don't want you bothering that thing." Thing? Alright, I'll admit I thought of her as an it a few times, but that was back when I thought she was dead. I stopped. "Excuse me, miss. I'm new here. Is there something wrong about ghoul ponies?" The mayor looked abashed, staring more at Calamity than me. I didn't need to look. I could feel his scowl. "Well, nothing against good old Derpy. I mean, Miss Ditsy-Doo, but, well, know what?" I persisted, trying not to hint at the shame I was feeling for having balked at her smell or the grossly squishy way her big hug felt. "Well," the mare looked away furtively, then lowered her head, whispering, "They're all like ticking time bombs, right? I mean, you can see what being a ghoul is doing to their outsides. Imagine what it's doing to their brains. They could all go mad sooner or later. Dear Ditsy, she's lasted a good long time, and she's only a little crazy for it. But someday, I just don't want my boy to hurry that along none. Or there won't be, or be there when she does finally turn on us all." With that, the mare drew herself up, pulled Trolley close, and hurried off. Away, notably, from absolutely everything. I stood there a long time, stunned. Finally, I asked Calamity, "Is that true?" Calamity sighed deeply, which was not a good sign. "Yeah, for most of them anyway. You get into the wrong places, you'll find yourself hunted by whole packs of cannibal ghoul ponies gone zombie. But I mean this, that's only most of them. And even they're good pony folk, if a little smelly and strange looking. Until that day. Some, like Ditsy-Doo, break the odds and never lose their noodle." I understood the spirit of his words, but the news didn't make me scared of the hairless Pegasus writer. It made me ache for her. Crane was a yellow unicorn pony with an orange and beige striped mane and tail. Beige, I don't care. He wore a bright orange construction hat with a hole in it for his horn. When we found him, he was loading barrels onto the flatbed of a train car. This one actually still on the tracks that ran through town and connected to several others. "Howdy! Pleased to meet the little mare with the pip-bug who saved Sweet Apple and Ditsy-Doo. Not to mention Desert Rose, Barrel Cactus, and Turquoise." He stopped to shake my hoof vigorously. "Pleased to meet you too." I smiled, feeling a touch wobbly after the hoof shake. "Railright told me you're the pony to talk to if I wanted to see some heavy lifting." Crane smiled, then casually lifted 3 barrels at once, putting them in their places on the flatbed. "Reckon I am." Then, to my shock, he asked, "What kind of spells you got?" "Spells?" I replied hesitantly. He continued talking while 3 more barrels levitated by, glowing with the same light as shone from his horn. "Unicorn ponies generally have a small collection of magical spells, usually related to what he or she is destined to be best at. Me, for instance. I can make all manner of repairs to the rails and trains just by focusing at them." Ah, crap. Kicking a hoof at the ground, I sighed deeply. "Nope, just telekinesis. No spells." I knew it was pathetic. Levitation was basic Philly stuff. By the time I got my cutie mark, every other unicorn in Stable 2 had a nice collection of spells. Thank you, Crane, for reminding me that I was probably the most unmagical unicorn ever. Crane's eyes widened in surprise, and he quickly changed the subject. And now I've got lots of work to do, but I tell you what. If y'all would do me a small favor, I'll return it by teaching you everything I know about heavy lifting. Sounded great to me. What's a favor? Fetch him a soda, maybe some lunch, help him tie down the barrels on the flatbed? I've been having a small bit of trouble with the things that been crawling up out of that old stable west of here. From what I hear, y'all might have no slouch with slinging a firearm. Just get down to the stable and close the door. I reckon we can clear out the varmints up here if some pony locks their own breeding grounds. Okay, so it's not a soda run. So why are you with me again? The sky darkened prematurely. I would have to turn on the lamp spell of my pip-buck. I figured I owe you one, Calamity said earnestly as he followed beside me. Maybe a whole mess of ones considering all y'all did for the good ponies of New Appaloosa. With a sigh, I tried to console him. You couldn't have known. I was wearing blood-caked raider armor and carrying an arsenal that would make the average raider radioactive in envy. Caked in blood, armor you only had because you needed protection while saving the lives of those good town ponies. Only 4, really. Ditzy-Doo saved Sweet Apple Acres. And you saved Ditzy-Doo so she could save Sweet Apple. In my book, that makes 5. He took a deep breath. Besides, I can't consent you going down there alone. I've heard dark stories about those stables. Bad things happen down there, and too many of them. I came from a stable. Hell, every pony came from some pony who came from a stable, right? I can see why an empty one would be an inviting nesting ground, but it's not like the stables are cursed or sinister. Calamity mulled that over. I suppose you're right. All except the few like Ditzy-Doo who somehow survived the apocalypse on the surface, or are descended from folk who did. I halted my trot too abruptly. So abruptly, I nearly fell over. My surviving canteen, refilled, swung out and back, smacking me in the chest. Ditzy-Doo survived the war? She's that old? Yeah, ghoul ponies don't age like normal pony folk do. The idea of a pony who had actually been around way back then, who knew what actually happened, blew my mind away. What's her story? Calamity snorted a laugh. So long I couldn't even guess at most of it. I do know she was flying outside Cloudsdale when the first mega spell hit it. She was caught at the very edge of the magical energies that wiped the entire city gone. Been a ghoul ever since. I nodded, continuing in solemn silence. The image of entire city of the clouds filled with Pegasus ponies playing out in my head. There 1 minute, and then just nothing. The clouds above started to leak. It was like being in a shower back at Stable 2. Only the shower was everywhere. And it didn't stop. If I hadn't been cleaned by Candy the day before, I would have welcomed it, despite the cold of the water. Now, soaked to the bone, I just found it miserable. The sky had turned so dark I had to turn on my Pip-Buck's lamp spell to see ahead of me. In theory, it was still daylight, but that was hard to believe. A ferocious wind had picked up out of nowhere and was whipping the rain out of us like a weapon. Ah, yeah, see, she's never experienced a storm before because she's been living underground all her life. What's going on? I cried out to Calamity about the storm. It's a thunderstorm, and a mighty big one. We best be finding some shelter because it's getting started. Thunderstorm? I hollered back as a patch of clouds lit up, briefly but brilliantly. What's thunder? The sky exploded. It was like the sound of a gunshot. If the gun was wielded by Celestia herself and was made out of pure awesome. I actually tried hiding under Calamity. Get a hold of yourself there. Timidly and a little bashfully, I backed up and got to my hooves. Another flash illuminated the whole countryside in stark white and shadow gone before I realized it had happened. Another mighty boom tore at the sky, following close behind the flash. Calamity had to put his forehooves on me to stop me from trying again. If y'all are so scared of that thunder, wait till you actually see the lightning, he chuckled. Now let's get to moving so we can find some shelter. Each flash of light in the clouds was followed by a terrifying crack of mighty boom. A little later, I did indeed see the lightning. I'd been envisioning lightning bolts like those blasts of electricity the brain bots had been shooting at me. It was nothing like that. This was a white tear through the sky, like the universe itself had been slashed open. It lasted an eye blink, but I still saw its afterimage floating in front of my face for several minutes later. I also saw some pony, or I thought I did, in the far distance of a hilltop briefly illuminated by the lightning. I couldn't tell if it was a unicorn or Pegasus. At first. I thought it was both, but the vision was gone before I could be sure I had seen anything at all.
It's Luna.
If it's Luna, you guys better tell me, because I'm pretty sure it's Luna, because that seems to be the typical, idea. But if it's not Luna, then don't tell me who it actually is, because that would just be a spoiler. So, if it is Luna, then tell me. But if it isn't Luna, then don't tell me. Like, you can just say I got it wrong, or whatever, We galloped around, the ground beneath us increasingly muddy and treacherous, until we were forced to stop by a raging, frothy river. The muddy, rushing water was tearing away at the banks on each side. I could see the black shapes of uprooted dead trees as they were carried away. Just beyond the other side of a cliff face, water was pouring down the cracks on a cliff in 100 rivulets, each feeding into the river at the bottom. Across from us, just a little way up the cliff, was a dark mouth of a cave. The path up to it was already washed away. I stood there, staring helplessly, trying to figure out how we were going to get across. Then I felt myself being lifted into the air as Calamity flew us over the river and set me down in the mouth of the cave, feeling stupid. I stepped further in, shining the lamp of my pip-buck into the cave. The path continued up about a yard, then took a steep decline with frightfully old metal stairs. Rusted nearly black, leading to a concrete landing. Once at the landing, the rough walls were replaced by stonework. At the end, a very familiar-looking steel door hung open from its hinge arm. The number 24 was emblazoned on the center of the door. Beyond lay a rusted, ruined doppelganger of the place I had once believed would forever be my home. Calamity rushed past me. "Don't just stand there gawking. Help me get this door shut before that darn river spills its banks completely and floods this hole." I was trying to push the door, physically. I looked down, noticing for the first time that the floor of the cave was already a puddle, 2 inches deep and growing. Moved into action, I rushed to the controls. I paused long enough to check the bolting mechanism, which was actually entirely missing, and making sure I'd be able to open it again. Satisfied I could, I tried to push up the lever. It didn't want to go. Focusing, my horn glowing brightly, I added my telekinetic strength to that of my hooves. With a loud grinding sound, the lever moved. With a wheeze, the lever arm moved, and the door to stable 24 slammed shut, groaning in protest. I think that's a good spot to leave a cliffhanger, so Calamity and the fine young lady saw a mysterious figure, were attacked by a thunderstorm, met some characters in New Appaloosa, and they went into a cave. Now we're going to leave a cliffhanger here, and I don't have much else to say, so that's just going to be the end of that. Yeah.